All right, here we are. It is July 22nd. We are on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse, your host and your guide. We're starting a little bit late this evening. Some of you have maybe watching me thrash about here as we're trying to get things organized. We have capacity now to take a phone call. And that's going to take some timing on your part. For those of you who know what my personal phone number is, you are welcome to call. Here's the way it works. When I finish a segment, you will actually see and hear the finish of that segment as much as 40, 50 seconds after I'm actually quit. So it's imperative that if you want to call in, that as soon as I stop, you make that phone call. I can only take the one call at a time. I will make sure that I talk for at least a minute or more to make sure that if you wanted to call, you can do that. I fully expect tonight, if anyone does call, it'll just be a courtesy call. You don't have to have a significant question. We're testing the system. I'm using my personal phone. Some of you know that number. I'm not going to give it out over the air. And if it works at all, I will go out and get another phone. What do you call it? A track phone or something that doesn't cost a monthly fee and can actually plug something in the bottom. That's the important part of all of this. And from that point on, we'll be able to do this on Sunday nights. It's an iteration, and I think it's a good iteration. I'm looking forward to what it might or will produce. We've got a whole lot of stuff we're going to be talking about tonight. I tell you that every week, and it never ends. I have to shut it off. Every day, the last couple of days, has been one more thing, add a little something to this one, change that one. You got to stop somewhere. And last week it was a little frustrating because I gave you information, and almost immediately after the show ended, some significant information came out that I didn't get a chance to tell you about till tonight. I've got to have more time. I'm going to get more time, and then we'll do some Twitter and some Facebook posts and some other kinds of things. Get back to writing the blogs, all 4 or 5 of them. Little things like that that fill up the time frame. As some of you know, I have pushed into another venture that shows great hope in being able to give me what I need to survive in about a half or less of the time that I'm spending now. And that will be to your advantage because I'll get more time. I've got 2 or 3 books I want to write. I get things you have to do. I guess that's going to have to wait until I'm 85 years old and can no longer function. And then I'll get to do some of the things that I really would love to do. We're here tonight, as we are every Sunday night, to solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less. We do want to hear from you. You can chat up in the chat room. Now you can call in, or at least we're getting that started. You can leave a comment on the Facebook page or the YouTube page, a question, something of that nature. Initially, when all of that started to go, all I got was nonsense. Now some significant things are being said and done. People are asking good questions, seem to appreciate some of the information. That's a good thing. We would encourage you, if God so leads you, to help with the ministry. This is a nonprofit faith ministry. Without your help, we can't continue with this. It's been good these last 20 years. Believe it or not, it's 20. It's only rounding out 19. But it's close enough to call it 20. You can go to the website. We have a PayPal account. If you want to send a personal check, give me an email, and I'll tell you how to where to send it and so forth. Make the check out to Alternatives. That is the nonprofit corporation under which we operate. A number of issues have popped up this week, not the least of which are the issues surrounding Israel. The Israeli Air Force launched a major wave of strikes aimed at Hamas targets across the Gaza Strip this past week. This is one of the things that was happening as we went off the air last Sunday night. The folks over there in Gaza made incursions. They really did something to get Israel's attention. And they turned around and they responded with a massive bombing program. In the attack, 4 Hamas fighters were killed. And the defense minister there in Israel actually said the gloves are coming off. It tells us they've been going easy. They've been tiptoeing around. They haven't been bombing really major targets, trying to stay calm and just make a point. But in this foray, apparently 15 targets were hit, including the Hamas brigade headquarters. The headquarters are reported to have been completely destroyed, along with what are called weapons and ammunition stores, training grounds, observation posts, control centers, and the offices of the brigade commander. That got their attention. Just this weekend, in the weekend news, an unofficial ceasefire has been reached. That was Friday, Saturday, between Israel and Hamas. It came after Egypt stepped in and warned the Palestinian terror group that Israel would launch a war in 2 hours if Hamas responded to IDF retaliatory strikes in Gaza following the killing of an IDF soldier by Palestinian sniper fire. That, according to Israeli television. Channel 10 News in Israel also reported that Egypt threatened to impose sanctions on Hamas if it does not end the launch of incendiary airborne devices toward Israeli territory. Things are really getting serious in Israel. Back here at home, an Oregon art gallery faced massive backlash over a display depicting an ISIS-like decapitation of President Donald Trump. Maybe you saw some of those pictures. They cleaned it up a little bit, but not enough. One grand art gallery in Portland featured the gruesome art in its front window, believe it or not, depicting a work showing a grisly decapitation attempt. The image shows a large knife being held at the president's neck, and blood is dripping from his nose, and his eyes are rolling up into his head blankly. These are the people we're dealing with. Not the militants out in the field, the crazies. These are people running an art gallery. Attorney Alan Dershowitz spoke of the light fog of fascism that seems to be descending on universities. A fog of fascism that poses a tremendous danger for the future of Western values. Kenneth R. Marcus of the Louis D. Brandeis Center said, quote, "In universities, there is almost a kind of intellectual masochism, the sense that we should not be proud of the values we stand for as a nation, that we even need to engage in a kind of ritual self-flagellation," end of quote. Jeffrey Herf from the University of Maryland said, "There is too little in our universities being taught about what the admirable aspects of Western tradition really are." People are starting to sit up a little straighter, take a little bit more note, and speak out against some of this crazy stuff. Victor David Hansen, a historian, and Brooke Goldstein, or Stein, I guess, from the Lawfare Project, said the influence of multiculturalism has resulted in a moral relativism and a chilling effect on free speech, as any criticism of non-Western culture is now deemed to be hate speech. And the culprit here? Something called identity politics. You've heard the phrase. This social experiment has fragmented our society into tribal conflicts among races and between gender. Radical feminism, for example, is carrying out an assault on gender relations, while masculinity has contributed to the breakdown of the family unit. At issue is the alarming decline of the birth rate in the West and an emasculated society that is too timid to defend itself from the threat of an aggressively male-dominated Islamic subculture here within the West, a culture that is rapidly outbreeding us. Shimon Samuels of the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Raymond Ibrahim of the Freedom Center believe a literal genocide is being waged in the Middle East against Christians and Jews who are being targeted even in Europe and in the United States. All this as the West wrestles impotently with its own self-loathing and willful blindness. Why? Well, the experts point to social structures and political ideology, neither of which actually answers the question. Here we have a global shift in social structure and the deliberate effort of a religious system devised and designed to combat biblical Christianity, taking advantage of all of this. Islam was devised as a deliberate enemy of Christianity. The emphasis is to create a sense of cultural superiority among the sons of Ishmael and Esau, to combat both the children of Isaac and Jacob as well as this new religion in those days called the Way, later called Christianity. That it has chosen this time to assert itself into Western society is instructive. See our series on the invisible war. Tonight we're going to be looking at part 10 of that series. You can catch them all online. Believe it or not, we are being told today that if Texas, the state of Texas, the Lone Star State of Texas, with a constitution that gives it the right to get out of the Union anytime they want, the Lone Star State, if it keeps pumping oil at its current rates, Texas could boast the United States' world's largest oil producer this fall, surpassing Saudi Arabia and Russia. Right now, Texas is the world's third largest oil producer. We have been treated this week to all sorts of comments, commentary, and the like having to do with President Trump's visit to Russia. Tucker Carlson this week said that President Donald Trump caved to U.S. intelligence agencies and to the forces that are trying to destroy our democracy by turning back on his comments from the summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He says the president buckled. Literally, he said, well, as the storm swirled, the president bowed to the inevitable, genuflecting before the U.S. intelligence agencies, whose judgment must never be questioned, and recited the now obligatory oath of loyalty to the spy bureaucrats now in charge of our country. Strong words. Carlson played the video of Trump walking back his comments by explaining that he meant to say wouldn't when he said would about the Russians meddling in the U.S. elections. He says, so that's the hostage tape. And with that, he threw his pen on the table. He was disgusted. The president buckled, he said, to criticism. And that's not what they're saying, but that's exactly what happened. He buckled. He went on to say that is politics after all. While Jeanine Pirro pointed out that Trump says, I have great confidence in my intelligence people. He's making a distinction between the former and the current. However, he said, I also recognize that in order to build a brighter future, we cannot exclusively focus on the past. As the world's two largest nuclear powers, we must get along. He also said the only collusion going on here is Hillary Clinton selling 20% of America's uranium to Russia with a payback of $145 million to the Clinton Foundation and $500,000 worth of quick cash deposited in Bill's account for a 20-minute speech he gave at the Kremlin. And nobody wants to talk about it. We're going to come back to the view of our president in the midst of all of this a little bit later in the show, because I have my opinions and I would like to share them with you. Right now we're going to take a little break. We're going to come back and look at some of the social religious news that made the news this week. Stay tuned.